Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to This Week with Mallory. I'm State Senator Mallory McMorrow here to provide you with an update on what is going on in your state legislature here in Michigan, what's going on around the state, and open it up for live Q&A. So I see people starting to trickle in and join us. So welcome if you are on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Hopefully we'll be able to get Instagram Live working soon as well, working out kind of how to make that happen, which is exciting. Okay, so for those of you who are new to this, how this works is this is live. We stream across 4 platforms. So we'll run through the updates and then we can open it up for live Q&A. So no matter what platform you're on, you can go ahead and type your question into the comment section. We just ask that you be sure to type your full name in case that is not obvious from your screen name, and then go ahead and let us know what city you're in so that we can make sure to get to constituent questions first. We did this last time and it was a lot of fun. So even if you don't have a question, just feel free to pop in and say hello and tell us where you are tuning in from. It's a rainy Friday here in Michigan, so hopefully we've got a good Friday wherever it is that you are. All right, we are going to jump right in. I will go ahead and share my screen with you. And we've got some Lansing updates here. A lot has been going on in the state legislature to share with you. First of all, the Michigan Senate and the Michigan House both voted to ban child marriage here in Michigan. And if your reaction right off the bat is, holy crap, how is this still legal? That's the right reaction. Believe it or not, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of young people, children who get married off here in the state of Michigan and frankly all around the country. And there was a really just kind of sad story in MLive that ran a few months ago, specifically about a young woman in Royal Oak who noted that she was married when she was 16 to a man in his 20s. And her story was that, she came from a low-income family and her mom was a single mom and she was poor, and that her mom signed off on this marriage. And this woman stated that, it likely was to get out of a bad financial situation. And she thought her mom might have thought that she would be better off with a man taking care of her than in that situation. But she said, as many of these marriages do, it went south very quickly. And what you may not realize when you're 14 or 15 or 16 is you are not an adult. You cannot sign a contract. You cannot rent a hotel room if you're in an abusive situation and you need to get out of it. You can't hire a lawyer. And it has taken so many of these women as they've gotten older, potentially many, many years to get out of these marriages. So we passed this legislation in both the state house and the state senate to ban child marriages, anybody under the age of 18, with no exceptions. And I just want to say thank you to all of the women who did come forward and share their stories, and just a huge amount of credit to my colleague, Senator Sarah Anthony, who has been passionately working on this issue since she took office in 2018. This is legislation that has been introduced term after term after term. Democrats were in the minority for the past many terms. And Sarah noted that what has happened is sometimes Republicans have picked up these bills, but in previous terms, they might have picked them up. We may have had some hearings, but they never got across the finish line. So we finally got these bills across the finish line. And these were bipartisan bills that broadly had nearly unanimous support. So huge thanks to everybody for working on that and putting Michigan on the right side of history here. Okay, so let's take a step back. 2022. On the ballot, we voted on Prop 2. Prop 2 was a ballot initiative that expanded voting rights here in the state of Michigan. It guaranteed 9 days of early voting. It guaranteed prepaid postage on absentee ballots. It also guaranteed drop boxes be readily available in every community for, making sure that everybody has equal access to drop boxes and the ballot. But what you may not know is even though voters voted to put that into the state constitution via the ballot last year, we in the legislature still have to implement that. So we have to introduce and pass laws to effectively codify Prop 2 in law. And especially, it's a good move, but a really complicated one. So Michigan is a very diverse state. We are a state of 10 million people. We've got densely populated urban areas. We've got densely populated suburban areas. We have rural areas. We have areas where you might have a full-time clerk and a full-time staff. We have some areas where the clerk operates in a very small precinct and might even operate out of their house. So we wanted to make sure we worked with municipal clerks, county clerks, all throughout the state. Again, huge credit to colleagues here for doing a lot of the work here. Jeremy Moss, who chairs the Elections and Ethics Committee, has been convening work groups since the beginning of the term to get to the best solution that works for all communities so that we can implement the will of the voters in a way that works for everybody. So we held very long hearings on all of these bills. There's a ton of bills in this package, and it was important that we move them through as quickly as possible while getting it right, because this is going to go into effect before the next election. So I'm going to try to minimize myself so you can see what is in these bills. Does that work? Oh my gosh, look at that technology. Amazing. All right. So what is included in this historic new era of voter access and engagement in Michigan? Like I said, 9 days of early voting. The constitutional amendment guarantees a minimum of 9 days of early voting. Precincts. This allows, like I said, you've got some really rural areas in the state. This allows local officials to increase precinct size, increase the registered voters in a single precinct, which will allow us to implement more of these reforms in a way that is cost effective and makes sense for people. Absentee ballots. A lot of people really like voting absentee. We know that many of our seniors have long voted absentee previously. Before 2018, anybody 65 and up was automatically eligible for an absentee ballot. But if you wanted to vote absentee prior to 2018, you had to provide a reason that you were going to be out of state. But what we often know is you may not know why you want to vote absentee. You may not know that you're out of town. So in 2018, voters voted to create no reason absentee voting, which is fantastic. And we have seen record turnout in Michigan ever since, because we also know that a lot of people like getting their ballot and taking time to study it, get to know the candidates. But a kind of weird tweak in that is if you signed up to be on the absentee ballot list, you still had to request an absentee ballot with every election, which I've had people shoot me notes on Instagram and elsewhere saying you didn't know you had to do that. So you thought you signed up for absentee ballots and then the next election came by and you didn't get your ballot. What was going on? So Prop 2 changed this. So if you sign up to be on the permanent absentee voter list, it's one application and then you will receive your absentee ballot with every election. Now, I know there's going to be a question about security with that. There's still this signature matching component. You still have to sign your ballot when you turn it in. The clerks still have to check that so that it is a felony to vote illegally. It rarely happens. It is a tiny fraction of a percentage of people who attempt this, but we still wanted to make sure that election security was built in. Michigan has paper ballots. We are actually one of the most secure states in the entire country when it comes to voting. Prepaid postage, I mentioned this. So if you get an absentee ballot, that you will have the ability to turn it back in without postage. Those of us who live in Oakland County decided last election to do this on their own. So now this is statewide. Again, this is about making sure that every voter in the state of Michigan has equal access. Photo ID, we expanded some options for identification to present ID because we know that, especially for seniors and students, you may not have a driver's license. So seniors who have decided not to renew their license or they've aged out, yes, you can go to the state and you can get a state ID. But that's another trip to the Secretary of State's office. And if you are a student, you may not have a driver's license yet. You may not have gone through the process. So valid student identification, university identification will be an eligible form of ID. Something that came up in our committee hearings, which I think is an important differential, ID is not used to prove that you are a registered voter. ID is just to prove to the person signing you in at the polling place that you are the person you say you are. So they match your photo to your identification. But that doesn't change anything with the voter registration process to prove that you are an eligible voter and to register to vote. And then lastly, drop boxes. at least one drop box per every 15,000 registered voters to make sure that, again, we have equal access for every voter in the state of Michigan. So, lot of work. Huge thanks, as I said, to Senator Moss and for everybody who has been working on this. I had a bill that passed through as a part of this package to create and update our voter ballot tracking system. Some of you in the past may have used michigan.gov/vote. You can type in your name, your address, and you can find out if you have received an absentee ballot, if you've turned it in, if it's been accepted. That's great. Prop 2 actually required that we update this system so that you can opt into text message updates if you want that. So I introduced legislation that passed through to create that system that the Secretary of State's office will oversee. Very exciting stuff. Busy committee hearings. Okay, what's next? Distracted driving. I don't know about all of you. I drive to Lansing 3 days a week. You probably don't. It's 86 miles one way, it's 86 miles back. And there is, I have to say, at least once a week, I almost get sideswiped. Somebody comes in too fast. There's somebody who almost hits a wall with their car because they're looking at their phone. What you may not know, Michigan has long had a law banning texting and driving. But that was when we all had, Nokias or Motorola Razors where it was just the numbers and you kind of knew where the letters were. That law hasn't been updated since. So now that we all have these guys, smartphones, believe it or not, it's not illegal to do anything else on your phone while you're driving. You could watch a whole movie on your phone while driving, and that was still legal. We know that distracted driving is incredibly dangerous. It leads to fatalities. It leads to injuries. You've all seen it. It's really scary. And we updated that. Finally, this has been an effort a long time in the making. So here's what this means moving forward. This updates the ban on texting and driving to just basically include using your phone in your hands at all while driving a vehicle will no longer be allowed after June 30th. That's when this goes into effect. Now, if you're asking yourself, well, how do I get around? I use Google Maps. How am I going to find my way? It just means you can't hold it. So you cannot drive while you're holding your phone in one hand. That's incredibly distracting. You can still use your phone by using the voice commands like Siri or OK Google. And you just have to put it on a clip on a mount in your vent, or there's cup holder mounts, all kinds of mounts that are available if you do not have a vehicle that has something like Apple CarPlay or Google Play built into it that you can connect your phone to. A clip mount will be fine. But just be aware, if a police officer sees you holding your phone while driving, they will now have the legal authority to pull you over and issue a citation. Next up, the Crown Act. This picture you see here is from the bill signing for the Crown Act. Again, this is Sarah Anthony week going on up here. So Sarah introduced this legislation again many years ago to prohibit discrimination based on hair. This is something that disproportionately impacts Black women in interviews in the hiring process. We have all likely seen some of those stories of kids who go into school and administrators cut their hair, cut their locks off. And it's really devastating. I have seen some commenters around on social media saying, how is this an issue? I've never been discriminated against. If that's your response, this legislation wasn't for you. You have never experienced that personally. But this makes sure that employers, when it comes to housing, cannot discriminate based on traditionally Black hairstyles. And we know that we heard stories, and Sarah shared them, of many, again, particularly women, spending thousands of dollars bleaching, damaging their hair with some of these really caustic chemicals that have led to cancer in some instances, just to make sure that they could conform to what was perceived to be professional. And that's not what we want moving forward. So this was a big step. There was a really, really cute photo at the press conference of a little girl, kind of being a citizen journalist and taking pictures of the press conference. And that's why we do this, right? You want to see people who look like you being successful. So congrats to Sarah. And I was proud to co-sponsor this legislation. Lastly, Mackinac Island. The Mackinac Policy Conference is a conference that happens every year up on Mackinac Island. It is basically every policymaker in the state of Michigan, as well as many industry groups, advocacy organizations, all get together over a week on the island, which may seem a little strange at first. This was actually my first ever Mackinac Policy Conference in year 5 of my time in the legislature. And it is a little strange. It feels like sort of the script to a bad reality show, like we trap everybody on an island and see what happens. But it was really, really productive. It's hard to schedule meetings. It's hard to get time with people. But when you are kind of there, the rest of your concerns are sort of blocked out and you have time just to hash through things. We had really productive conversations about regional transit, about the environment, about economic development, about how we're going to attract and retain more people in our state. And it was really wonderful. So I'm glad I went, and we unveiled our new Make It in Michigan strategy to win projects, invest in people, and revitalize places. If you've known me for any period of time, you know that economic development reform is my bread and butter, my sweet spot. I've been talking about this for a really long time, and you will start to see what this looks like in practice. We are working through the summer on legislation to make sure that anytime we are going after economic development deals, anytime we are asking a company to come to or expand in the state of Michigan, we are also using that opportunity to invest in ourselves. So a great example of that is Amazon HQ2. Virginia won this project, which Michigan bid on very, very heavily in 2017. Michigan offered $4 billion in incentives, but you may remember that Amazon announced, you guys are not even in the running. We didn't even crack the top 20 because they said you don't have talent and you don't have transit. Virginia, on the other hand, offered a much lower incentive, but they invested more than $1 billion in education, including K-12 and a new graduate program and a new campus of Virginia Tech, and expanded public transit. Now, from 2017 to 2023, there was a downturn in the tech industry. Amazon announced that they were pausing the development of that project, but the residents are still benefiting from that enhanced public transit, and the construction of the new campus of Virginia Tech is already underway. So that's an approach that's working in other states. It also allows, when I've talked to business leaders, the company to do what the company can do, rather than giving money directly to the company to do kind of workforce development or housing on their own. It allows them to stick to their core competence, and it shows that we're willing to invest in ourselves. So more to come on that, but this was an exciting announcement this year on Mackinac to take a more holistic approach. And it was exciting to see movement in my 5th year in office towards something that I've been thinking about for a really long time. Finally, before we get to questions, good news from the district. We always love celebrating good news. A baby giraffe. Sorry, I was looking at a lot of cute animal videos this morning. Congratulations, we have a new resident, a new constituent with a very long neck who eats a lot of leaves, a baby giraffe at the Detroit Zoo. 5-year-old giraffe Zara gave birth to her first calf a few weeks ago. He's doing great, but he was born slightly underweight and had a hard time nursing, which prompted intervention from the zoo's expert veterinarian team. Zoo officials say that he is gaining weight, and they have every reason to believe that the yet unnamed calf is now off to a very healthy start. So welcome, little guy. Can't wait to see what your name is. Next up, touch a truck. Anybody who has toddlers, my toddler is no exception, loves trucks. Just loves them. Construction trucks, garbage trucks, fire trucks. Trucks are cool. Trucks are great. So Oak Park is hosting a touch a truck event where your little one can get up close and personal with all kinds of big and cool trucks. There will be fire trucks, dump trucks, and diggers. My daughter is absolutely obsessed with things that dig. She thinks they are super cool. Kids will be able to walk around, touch the vehicles on hand, and ask the drivers questions about their jobs. No registration is required. Trucks will be located in the parking lot behind the Oak Park Public Library. And a special thanks to Oak Park Public Safety and Public Works for making these trucks available for all of our little ones who I know are going to be like so pumped up about this. Finally, a big welcome to Coffee and Bark in Berkeley, which is coming soon. A new small business coming into our district on Coolidge to offer daily single origin coffee blends, lattes, cappuccinos, frappes, and pastries in small bites. But you might be wondering, where does the Bark come in? They will also have a co-working space, but they will have birthday cakes, pastries, and cupcakes for dogs. So you can pick up some treats for your dog. Dogs will not be allowed inside for health and safety reasons, but pups can be outside. And I'm sure in the summer, in the warm months, this is going to be super fun to bring your dog to have a delightful treat while you get some coffee. It's also going to be a co-working and event space, so another great space for us to all get together in the community. I love that. So welcome Coffee and Bark. We're always excited when there's a new small business popping up in our district. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. I'm going to go ahead and bring on Emily, our Chief of Staff. Welcome, Emily. Happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday. Hello, everybody.
All right. Quick reminder before we get into questions. Make sure you type your name in the comment section of whatever platform you're on. If you are on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, you can ask a question in the comment section on that platform. Please type your full name. Let us know what city you're from so that we can prioritize constituent questions, and then go ahead and ask away. What do we got this week?
All right. Well, hello, and hello to Mary Mills from Royal Oak. She's tuning in. We have a hello from Chicago, from Sydney. We got folks from all over. But Mary, actually, so from Royal Oak, has a question. She was at one of our Silence the Violence rallies that happened all over the state that different groups hosted. And she said that she learned that you can purchase a gun with no requirement for safety or gun use training. And is this something that you will be looking to change?
Thanks, Barry. That's a great question. So to recap on some gun violence legislation, we introduced and passed this year legislation that we have been working on for many, many years that includes requirements for safe storage of firearms when they are not in use. We've seen so many devastating stories, especially over the last few weeks, of kids, babies getting a hold of unsecured guns and either accidentally shooting themselves or siblings or a parent. So completely preventable violence that can be solved with safe storage of firearms. We also required universal background checks and instituted red flag laws here in Michigan. As we get through the budget process, the Gun Violence Prevention Caucus, which is now chaired by Representative Felicia Brabeck, she's taking over as the chair, we will be convening throughout the summer to really hash through a ton of different policy ideas on what we can tackle next. I know, for example, that there are many families, lifelong hunters here in the state of Michigan, where the parents are teaching firearms to their kids. But we will be taking a look at training, security, all kinds of ghost guns are an issue. There's all kinds of things out there that we're going to take a look at. What I'm really, really proud of with our first 3 packages of legislation is that we did a ton of work with researchers, states who have implemented laws, with doctors, psychiatrists, experts, to make sure that these things that we were implementing were going to make a real impact with the kind of slim majorities that we have. Something that is a reality is that we have a 2-seat majority, Democrats do, in the state House and the state Senate. I wish that gun safety reform was more bipartisan. It has been something that is very clear that the voters, when voters are consistently polled, it is a broadly bipartisan issue. 70, 80, 90% of voters on the whole support a lot of these common sense measures to gun violence. But unfortunately, the legislators do not reflect the will of the majority of voters. So more to come on that. We don't have specific bills yet for introduction, but we will be discussing any and all ideas as we look to keep moving on this epidemic of gun violence.
Yes. So right now, that's the only question we have. We have a couple of hellos, but no additional questions at this moment.
Awesome. Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. It's summer. So we are one day past the longest day of the year. So I don't blame anybody for not popping into our virtual coffee hour. So thank you so much for joining us. Emily, I will go ahead and let you go and close us out if we don't have any additional questions. I see people just popping in and saying hello. So hello. Thanks again. This is great. We will be in touch. Just so everybody is aware, we are working on finalizing and passing the state budget. That is the next big thing on our list. We've been working on it since January. Huge credit to all of our appropriation subcommittee chairs who have been pulling many long nights into the wee hours of the morning on the state budget. It is a huge amount of work. So that is what is up next. And then the legislature goes into session recess. So session is when we meet in the Capitol and you actually see us all on the floor voting. The legislature goes into recess in July and August, which means we will be in the district much more. We are already planning precinct potlucks, town halls, community events, because we've been spending so much time in Lansing. I'm looking forward to getting back into the district, but we will keep you posted on virtual live streams so that you know what's going on. And we will be in touch when the budget is passed to let you know what's in it and make sure you know where to find us if you are a constituent when we are out in the district. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you have a very happy Friday and a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.